Michael Sartain, welcome to the Man of War podcast, man. It is an honor to have you on here. I want to dive in to the world of manhood. So it looks like you have a great background. So what I'm going to do here is just for those who don't know who you are, can you speak a little bit about your background and what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a loaded question because I get this all the time, and I think a lot of people think that because they see my program that they think it's just about guys getting girls, and it's not. So, I'm a former U.S. military officer. I flew Spec Ops for 5 years. I did counterintelligence for 2 years. I have a BBA in management information systems with a minor in astronomy from UT Austin. And so I come from a background where the best way to explain it is I got to see bad leadership and I got to see good leadership because the thing that makes the story unique is that in between the University of Texas and the military, I was a DJ at a strip club for probably the first 2.5 years and a manager for like the last year and a half. So I started working there in 2000, 9/11 happened, and I joined the military in February of '04. So during my time waiting to get enlisted in the military, I was managing a strip club. And in that environment, I saw some of the craziest things you can see. I understand strip clubs are not indicative of all women, but that was the first place I think for a lot of people. A lot of people, we all have a moment where we're disillusioned. For some of us, it's a girlfriend who breaks up with us for nothing, for no reason, or it's a guy who takes your girl, and then you go back and you think about all the lessons that you were taught growing up from Disney, your parents, and the church about you just need to be nice to a girl, go up and be yourself, and then she'll just like you for you. And when you're young, you don't know any better. You believe that, and then you start going out into the world, and then you clearly see, especially when I'm at a university like Texas, where we have 50,000 undergrad, and you just see the guys that the girls would gravitate towards and some of the things they had going for them, whether it's social alignments or looks or status or whatever. And and so I just took these experiences that I had, again from working at a gentleman's club, from being in the military, and then I moved to Las Vegas in 2011, and I've been here since then. So it's about 14 years, and I really started to study what it was because it's not just the people that live here, but you have millions of tourists. About 44 million tourists come here every year, and just watching the dynamics of like what the actual strategies were between men and women, not what we said they were, not what someone said on a podcast, but like what's actually working, and then what does the data say about it. So about 2015, I get introduced to Dr. David Buss. He's a friend of Ty Lopez, and Ty's a friend of mine. And Ty tells me all about David Buss. And then when that happens, I start reading his books, and it's just an incredible moment where, just say you've been going out for a long time, and you've been dating a bunch of women, and there was no one really validating your experience. There are a few people, obviously, on the internet, and then you find out that there's an entire scientific study that kind of validates your experience. It was one of these moments where I was like, "Oh, I'm not insane. This is actually what the rest of the world has experienced." Like, 70% of women have backup partners. Men are more interested in a woman's looks. Women are more interested in a man's money. Like, there's just data on this, very
Mhm.
clear. The data about men and women, more sexual partners before they get married, the lower the marital satisfaction. Couples that have known each other for a longer period of time, there's actually a greater disparity. There's a greater disparity, but let me say it one more time. When couples know each other for a long
Right,
time,
right.
there's a greater disparity between how good looking they are. So, meaning the guy when you see the guy who's a 5 dating a girl who's a 10 and not using money, it's generally because they were in each other's social circle for a long time. I started looking up data on social alignments, and how throughout history, the men that had the greatest social alignments had the most access to resources and sexual selection. So,
Mhm.
just all of this stuff that I started looking at, and it became very clear to me that there was a clearer picture of how the intersexual dynamics
Mhm.
arena worked, and it wasn't being spelled out properly. It was not certainly was not being spelled out by mainstream dating coaches. And it certainly wasn't because they were more just go up and talk to the girl and tell her you like her type stuff. This terrible advice. And then it wasn't also being perpetrated correctly by the pickup artists, because they were just like, show her intent immediately, let her know that man to woman, show her intent. And I was like, that I know girls that are tens and they would never, ever fucking go for that. One of the other things I did to run an experiment, it's kind of an ongoing experiment for the last 10 years, is when I see a woman who is like uniquely beautiful, like literally I know either maybe I don't find her attractive, but I know all of my guy friends would find her attractive, or she's just breathtaking. One of the things I do is I'll go up and talk to her. I'll have her on my show or I'll talk to her and I'll say, hey, how did you meet like the last five guys that you dated? Was it ever through cold approach pickup? And the answer is never cold approach, and it's never dating apps. The answer is always because of a social circle, 100% of the time. It's either a social circle in person or a social circle that was created online, but it's always a social circle. So taking all this data and putting it together from the last 25 years, from the year 2000 to the year 2025, I was able to put together a program back in 2019 that I've been continuing to update up until today called the Men of Action program. And right now we are at 4,000 clients that are going through the program. It's been an unbelievable labor of love. Like the guys have come back to me years later. I've had several guys, probably four in the last month or so, thank me for helping me meet their wife or their girlfriend. And then there's also several guys that are just coming from zero, just like no woman sees them at all. It's another stat, just kind of get off topic here. The amount that women don't see men. So there's data on this as well. When humans see people that they find to be unattractive, men tend to feel more of like an aversion to them or like annoyance, whereas women don't see them at all. And I went on a date this like a couple of weeks ago. This beautiful girl, she's on the cover of Maxim. We're talking, she's a really, really smart girl. And we're having this conversation because she wanted to get into like some real socioeconomic, political conversations, whatever. And I started explaining to her, I was like, so genetically, because you're an attractive woman, the men in here that you don't see as high status, you don't even notice them. And she's like, that's not true. That's not me. And I look at her and I go, tell me about our busser. And she goes, we have a busser? And I was just like, yeah, the guy standing right there. That's our but she couldn't see him. She like literally didn't even see that he was there. And so I think part of what I do in my program is I'm speaking for the invisible man. I'm speaking for the man who just does not get seen. And he's not a victim. It's not women's fault. It's a function of genetics. This whole thing is Charles Darwin. But there's a way for him to be seen. First of all, he needs to recognize that he is invisible. And then secondly, needs to come to the realization that all he needs to do is a few things in order to be seen. And they're very simple, actually, which goes back to the original thing I said about social circle and social alignments, pre-selection, mere exposure, things like that, competency, relevancy, access to scarce networks and humor, charisma. There's just a few things that I found that worked in almost every case with every dude that caused them to be seen by women and more attractive to women. And so that has been the ethos of what I've been teaching for the last 16 years. I've only been teaching for 16 years, but I've been studying this for like the last 25. And that's where the program came up with, along with we have courses in parts of the program on leadership and entrepreneurship. So every guy who joins the course, we're always trying to help you build up your business as well. But that's secondary. It's generally in the form of brand building. We teach you how to start a podcast or do some kind of man on the street or some kind of brand building videos online. We additionally teach guys how to throw events, how to do invites. We go over a crash course on evolutionary psychology. We go over critical thinking. This is a massive one. We have a critical thinking pillar in there. And then we go over just like what is the reason why you go on a date and the dates seem to end always at the same place. She doesn't want to come back to your place. She comes back to your place. She immediately wants to leave. We go and we break down what the issues are there piece by piece on a granular level. And like I said, we have 4,000 guys in the course right now. I'm doing a call right after this with, I do about 100 guys at a time on a call when I do my group calls. And then I do my one-on-one calls or just one-on-one. When we go through that, we're going to pick out some guys and we're going to go granularly, piece by piece, through what's going on in their life and try to help them out. And at the same time, I'm also helping one guy set up his accounting firm. Another guy is building a gym. I've got several attorneys and doctors in the program, a ridiculous number of pilots. And I know that's probably because I was in the Air Force, but we have a ton of pilots in the program. And then several professors at large universities. I have Ivy League professors that are clients in the program. So that's what's been going on recently. We're just trying to be almost like not a database, what's it called? A knowledge base for how some of these concepts and intersexual dynamics work. And I know there's a long answer, but one last thing I want to bring up is in 2019, when I made the course trying to express to guys that like the easiest way for you to get the most attention with the least amount of effort was to use social media. And I did so as saying almost like an ancillary thing. It's like, okay, yeah, go out and live your normal social life. And in addition, do social media. Since then, since COVID, the world has become way more virtual and way less in real life. And now it's like the things I was teaching in 2019, they aren't ancillary anymore. They're mandatory. Any guy who's sitting there going to bed at 8:30 p.m. with no Instagram, trying to go out and meet the dream girl, the girl of your dreams, good luck. It is not going to happen. Not in today's age. There's tons of reports showing that beautiful women are not going out anymore. Nightclubs in Los Angeles are dropping out, closing by the droves. In London, there's one story, 5 different nightclubs a week are closing in London because attractive women aren't going out anymore. So you need new mechanisms in order to meet those attractive women, in order to create events where there's 2, 3, 4 attractive women for every guy. And that's what we specialize in.
All right, that's a lot to swallow and to absorb. So, quick question here: have you been married before?
I have not.
Okay,
No.
all
My
right,
my 20s were I was married to the U.S. government.
gotcha. All right.
Mhm.
So, your experience has been, you've studied this for many years, and now you've taken, a position where, you are an expert in this particular field. So,
Yeah.
with that said, I'm going to bombard you with a few questions here. And, because I'm curious, I'm trying to find out like how you're wired and how you're thinking, and then kind of, break it down a little bit. All right. So you mentioned social circle for women. And then you also mentioned that women are just not going out often enough. They're not
Yeah.
out there. It's not like the old school way where a man would walk up to a woman and start speaking with her, buy her a drink, and the next thing you know, they're engaged in great conversation, and then things
Yeah.
go from there. That
But
doesn't.
by the way,
But
that does happen, but it only happens because of the way social media has changed women's perception of men. It
Mhm.
does happen, but it happens with a small subset of men who she finds very physically attractive. It still happens. It just doesn't happen with most men.
Got it. So the average common man,
Mhm.
I guess, doesn't really have a shot nowadays. Is that what you're saying? Kind of like he has to be at a higher level, a more of a high value man. Is that where you're going?
Well, Rafa, if I was sitting here with 12 girls, let's just say my show, Access Vegas, we'll have 12 girls on. And I were to say to them, ladies, here's the statistics for the average man in the United States. He is 5'9" and
Mhm.
he makes $59,000 a year.
Mhm.
How many of you ladies are interested in him? None of them would raise their hand. None of them, Rafa, would
Right.
raise their hand.
Right.
So what you're asking, because we do this a lot of times, we're like, what's a high value man? And a lot of it's just bro science. I'm not interested in bro science. Interested in actual science. And when you look at the data, right now there's a filter on Tinder for men under 5'9", and only 17% of women are interested in men under 5'9" when the average man is 5'9".
Mhm.
Like that's all you need to know to show that number one, hypergamy is real, and then number two, how there's going to be a disparity in the dating market, especially when it comes to dating apps. Dating apps are an exception where they're an unfamiliar environment. But yeah, that's definitely these women are not interested. The average woman is very much not interested in the average man, but the average man is very much interested in the average woman.
100%. I'm with you
Mhm.
100% on that. Now, all right. So I've coached about 15,000 men, and I have analytics of my own, and I have breakdowns of my own, and I have certain ideas. While I'm not a relationship coach, a lot of what I do is I do speak about relationships, but from a different perspective. Okay. Um, one of the things that we have tied into relationships and how to govern the essence of a manly stature is power, right? Power is a big deal. It's a concept that a lot of men, in my opinion, don't understand very well. Can you
Mm.
translate power? From your position, how does power affect women? Do women actually look at power? You see it around the world where you have this dude that is probably, contrary to what you said, 5'6", she's a model at 5'10", gorgeous. He's 20 years older than her, yet, he's driving a Rolls. He's probably worth a billion dollars. Uh, Give me your perspective, specifically about power. How does it play in your world?
Okay, so we would use the word status, but power is a function, is a subset of status. Okay,
Got it. Hmm.
and so the way I look at it, so you remember you were asking the question before, am I married? That's not my specialty. My specialty is taking men who are unattractive to women in general and making them attractive. Men who are invisible and making them be seen.
Hmm.
Right. So when you come to the concept of power, raw power in and of itself, like being the guy, the guy on stage in the rock and roll band and everyone's looking at him, that's power and status. And that absolutely generates attraction. And that can generate attraction for the guy who's not classically good looking. Exactly what you said before. A politician could have power. A billionaire could have power. One thing I really like to focus on in my program specifically is power without using money. I'm very big on not using money to attract women. It's one of the biggest things in my program. We never use money. I drive a 114,000 mile old beat up Lexus and I wear an Apple Watch. Like I do not ever use money to impress women.
Hmm.
And so how is it that we can do these things like show power without using money and not having an exceptionally good looking guy? So the answer for this answer is it's going to be social alignments, things like mirror exposure. It's going to be charisma. It's going to be pre-selection. Pre-selection is the easiest one. It's probably the most effective one out of all of them. And so what we've done is we've looked at the data when it comes to this really interesting stuff, actually pretty controversial to some people. They have these certain universities, I would say Southwest University and the Royal Society did a study on this where they would show women pictures of a man, and then they would show the same picture of the same man, but he's in the picture with a bunch of women, two or three women, and the women, it's not sexual, but the women look happy to see him. They look compliant and they look accepting. They look they validate his existence. They're happy that he's there. Okay. And in those photos, those men are deemed to be not only more physically attractive, they're also deemed to be smarter, more generous, more caring. Like it's incredible the way the data works out. When women see men with other women, even if they don't think those women are sleeping with him, this is a big one. Let me say this again, because this is where a lot of the people listening here are going to get confused. Even if you take a picture with a bunch of attractive women and those women aren't even sleeping with you, other women still find that to be more attractive. And there's a second group of studies that go over what happens when you take pictures with attractive women. Other men are more likely to want to network with you and meet you because it does make you look more high status. So there's two things going on here. There's what's called mate choice copying in humans, which is where women want what other women want. And then there's a second thing called social proof, which is where when a guy sees you with a bunch of beautiful women, this is an old trick I used to do whenever I would go to like a 10X conference or go see Ty Lopez speak or Aspire Tour or whatever, I would always show up with 4 or 5 girls, really pretty girls with me. And it was funny. I got into every VIP. I would always get to go backstage. All the guys would come up and want to talk to me. It was an incredible experience. And I actually got a lot of my guests from my podcast by using this technique, by having beautiful women with me. And more often than not, these are not women that I was dating. These are women that I was just friends with. But the feeling that women get when they see a guy with other attractive women, that feeling is one of the feelings that generates attraction. It's a pang. It's an evolutionary pang. So when you talk about power, your initial question was power. We try to relate that by saying status. What status do you have, and how do you show status? You can show status through relevancy, competency, access to scarce resources, access to scarce locations, access to scarce networks, through humor, charisma, pre-selection, and social proof. That's how we would show status. And by showing higher status, then that's generally where attraction occurs. And we're getting really inside baseball here, but the way hypergamy works, I don't know if you were going to ask me about this, but the hypergamy scale works is women generally, this is women over here, is men over here. Women generally want someone across or higher than them on the rating scale of like physical attractiveness. That's how hypergamy works. And
Right.
so basically what it's saying is she needs to believe that the guy she's dating has a higher SMV, sexual market value, than her. And by doing these things, so like for instance, if they met in a club, she sees him as a 4 and she thinks of herself as an 8, even though she's probably a 4. She sees herself like this. What happens is because he has women around him and because he effortlessly gets her in the VIP area. I'm just using an example at a nightclub or
Sure,
whatever.
sure, sure.
Because he has those things going for him, all of a sudden he becomes an 8.5, and because his status is slightly higher than hers, then hypergamy is satisfied, and then she can feel some level of attraction. I know that's a very bare bones way of explaining it, and I use the nightclub as an example because the interactions happen there very quickly. There's a lot of status shown, and there's a lot of attraction generated very quickly. But I mean, we can talk about the same things happening at a CES conference or with your coworkers or at a bar or at a wedding or a charity gala or
Mhm.
any other type of a museum, a museum opening, whatever. We'll see the same things, the same dynamics happen in those places. So how do we break that down and how do we teach that? That's basically what my job has been for the last 20 years.
So you talked about a social network. What
Mhm.
does that mean? Like, how would you be able to explain that to men specifically that don't quite understand it? You know, they're out there, they're trying to meet someone, they're spinning their wheels, they're going out to networking events, they're trying to meet girls, but they're not finding them.
Yeah.
And how do they get into these social networks?
Okay. So this is the most common question I get. So I just built a course based on this. I'm just going to give you the first 4 steps in the course. We call it the first 4 steps of MOA. It's called High Status Networking 101. It's in my forum, and it goes like this. Step number 1 is to fix your fucking Instagram. That's the way we say it, exactly like that. Because we have to wake them up because people don't seem to understand this. The more the society becomes virtual based, and the more people start looking for their interactions and stimulus on social media, it becomes more important for you to have a profile on social media that makes you look high status. It doesn't mean you have to have a million followers, but what it does mean, like 95% of the guys watching this right now, your Instagram is garbage. I mean, hot garbage, like 1 out of 10. The vast majority of you watching, because you aren't showing status. Instagram is to show status. Facebook is where you put the pictures of your dog, your grandma, your family reunion, your trip out to the beach, your picture of you catching a fish. That goes on Facebook. On Instagram, the purpose of Instagram is to show status. Generally for networking purposes or for business purposes. That's what you're supposed to do on there. So if you show levels of status on there, that's the first thing I need you to do. And so how do we show status? Again, going back to what I said before, relevancy, competency, access to scarce resources. We show things. We can put humor in the captions or have a funny video. Like I just made a really funny meme last night that went pretty viral. Things like that are what you can show on your social media so that when you meet a girl through cold approach or you meet a girl through your social circle or you meet a girl online, she immediately, the first thing she does, we interviewed like 30 girls from Swimsuit USA's World Championship. It's this bikini competition in Mexico. And I just interviewed all the girls. They were all under 25, no tattoos. None of them had an OnlyFans. And I asked them, I was like, what happens when you first meet a guy? And they all said the same thing. The first thing I do is go check his Instagram. So the first thing you have to do is fix your Instagram. Certain type of photos you need to post. So it's going to be it's either going to be the lifestyle photo, the candid photo, or the pre-selection photo, and we teach you kind of how to do all those different types of photos. And then all of a sudden, girls will check, and you'll notice lots of LOLs. You'll start when you post stuff on your story. All of a sudden, random girls who wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire start messaging you back, asking you how you're doing, saying, "Hey, I'm going out this weekend. What's a good place to?" You start getting all these random messages. So that's the first step: is you got to fix your Instagram. The second thing you have to do is build a list. And so a lot of people have like a dream sheet that they put up on the refrigerator of their 6-pack abs and their Lamborghini and all these things they want. I have a dream sheet. My dream sheet is 4,000 female influencers I want to come to my party and about 400 people that I want on my podcast. And I put that on a Google sheet and I just continually add to those 2 sheets. And what happens is when you build that list up, a couple of things go on. Number one, you start to let's just say you live in where Rafa, what city do you live in?
Boca in South Florida, Boca
So
Raton.
let's just say you're in Boca and you're just not familiar with the scene there. Like the
Mhm.
scene is where do the cute young girls go in Boca? You just for whatever reason you just don't know, because generally the advertisements you're not going to be able to Google that.
Mhm.
And so what happens is you start creating this list and then you start looking at the places that those girls in the list are tagged at and you
Mhm.
start noticing there's this one alpha restaurant that everyone goes to in Boca like frequently. And you're like, okay, let me check that out. So you go to that restaurant and then you go look at the tags and then you start seeing another 30 amazingly beautiful women that go to that same restaurant. Now you're adding them to your list. Does that make sense? One second. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can.
Sorry, had a little accident there. So you start to see that there's 30, 40 girls that are also attracted that go to that same restaurant.
Yep.
And now what's happened is you're now in phase with where the cool people are, the attractive women. You're in phase with them now. This is something that happens often when a guy comes to a new city. There's no welcoming party. It was like, hey, welcome to Warner Robins, Georgia. Here's where all the pretty girls are. No one does that. No one
Mm-mm.
wants you to. You're a man. No, you have no value to anyone, so they don't introduce you. They don't explain any of this to you. I did a similar thing in San Antonio, Texas, when I was a lieutenant in the Air Force, where I couldn't figure out where the attractive women hang out. So I went to like three or four strip clubs and I found the girl in the strip clubs who was physically my type. And I did this like 10, 15 times. I said, if you weren't working tonight, where would you be out? And I kept getting this same answer over and over again, Rafa. It was this place called the Falls, and I think a neighborhood called the Quarry. I remember it's 25 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. Anyway, so I ask all the guys in my unit, in my Air Force unit. I was like, have you guys heard of this bar called the Falls? And of course, none of the guys in my unit had ever heard of it. And Rafa, I go to the Falls, and do you know what I see? Stunning, beautiful women everywhere. Of course, the guys in my unit had never heard of this place. No one was going to invite them. And of course, the only way that I found out was by asking a beautiful woman, where are the best places to go? Now I'm in phase with where beautiful women hang out. This is a technique we teach. This is just step number two, on how to come in phase where, okay, there's a party in every city, there's a party going on somewhere where there's like three or four girls to every guy, and you're just not invited because you're a guy. And so how do we get invited to those things? Or how do we throw those parties ourselves? Step number three is to get open threads. This is the most confusing. This is the single most confusing thing in my entire program. So we come up with a group of events that you can invite people to. So, for instance, I'm inviting people to the Teatro White Party on June 28th in Los Angeles, and then July 19th it's going to be Babes in Toyland Support the Troops in Los Angeles, and then August 14th I'm inviting people to Babes in Toyland Nalu Bay Swim Week here in Las Vegas. And so when I invite the girls to these events, this is the part that just breaks people's brains. You can invite girls to events that they can't even get into and you can't even get into. Again, it just guys cannot conceive of what I just said. The reason why is because the only thing that matters is that you got an open thread with the girl. So frequently there'd be some like Hungarian supermodel. I'll message her because she's just my type, and I'm like, hey, would you like to come to the Maxim Hot 100 party in Los Angeles in July? And her response, Rafa, her response 99% of the time would be, who is this fucking guy? Leave him in delete request folder or whatever. But she sees that one message from me and all of a sudden she responds, no, I can't go, but thank you. What do I have now? I have an open thread with a stunningly beautiful woman. And as soon as she comes to the United States, I'm one of the first people she's going to message. Does that all make sense?
Yep. Yep. I hear you.
So it's really hard for guys to grasp this concept. I frequently invite large groups of women to parties that I know they can't go to because they live in Florida
Mhm.
and New York and the parties in Los Angeles all the time. And frequently I'll invite girls to parties in Miami that I'm not even going to, but because I got them on the list, I now have an open thread with thousands of girls. Most of you guys when you message girls, it goes into the request folder. That's the reason why they never answer. And so now I've just given you game. I've just explained to you how to get out of the request folder into the primary folder. So now you have direct communication with thousands of girls. And here's a part that gets even crazier is that now because you have an open thread, the first thing that she sees on her Discover page and the first thing she sees when she's scrolling is your photo. Now all of a sudden she's attuned with your, even if she's not following you, she starts seeing your content because you guys message one another. Try it as an experiment and you'll see what I'm saying. And then the fourth step is to take 6 female friends or 6 female teammates, if whatever word you want to use for it, and then go to an event. See if you can get 6 girls with you to go to an event. And then when you do, watch what happens. The girls at the event want to know who you are. The guys at the event want to know who you are. The girls that you bring with you, who you're just friends with, start becoming attracted to you. It's an amazing, amazing phenomenon that happens almost every time when you do it. So those are just the first 4 steps for you to get involved with arenas and events where there's 2, 3, 4 girls for every guy.
Very good. So let's hop on to the next thing. Why do you think, you mentioned guys that were invisible. Why are these men invisible? What's the problem? What's the underlying issue that these men are just not seen by women? And I hear everything that you're saying. There's always a strategy, a tactic, to improve yourself and to improve your chances of meeting beautiful women. But I want to kind of go back away from that a little bit and start talking about the actual man and why is he not seen? What is he not doing that others may be starting to move in the right direction, and he's still sitting around, using his old tactics that aren't working. And really, it starts, in my opinion, it starts from his mindset, the way that he's thinking, and we need to shift that. So how do you go about taking a man who is invisible and telling him, hey, man, we got to shift this. We got to make the move
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. So the first thing I would tell them, not to beat a dead horse, with those first 4 steps I just told you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're invisible in part because you don't know how to confer or convey. You don't know how to convey status whatsoever. And I've said this before. I've had several debates with pickup artists about this. Women do not sleep with you because of your intent. They sleep with you because of your status. So that's the first thing. The second thing is about the mindset and about being invisible. Let's take one step back. It's not anything they did wrong, and it's not anyone's fault. The only person you can blame for this is Charles Darwin. Throughout 2 gender species, especially mammalian 2 gender species, it's always men competing with other men for women. You see it with elephant bull seals and gorillas, where men will literally kill one another in order to have a harem of females. And these are mainly polygynous societies. Homo sapiens are polygynous as well, meaning there's a group of men that have generally had more access to women and a group of men at the bottom who've had very little. And if you look at the anthropological record, we find out that about 40% of men and 80% of women throughout history have reproduced. So a small group of men and a large group of women. Women also, this tells us another story, which is women don't really need to take risks in order to reproduce. Women can just be attractive and be able to reproduce. Men generally have to take risks. Those risks show what? What you asked me before, power. You take those risks to show status and power, and those things now make you from being invisible to visible. You have to perform as a man to go from invisible to visible, with the exceptions being you're a famous person's kid, you're a trust fund kid, or you're a male model. In those cases, yes, you don't have a burden of performance. But for most men, most of the time, have a burden of performance. You have an incredible podcast, you're an unbelievable surgeon, you're the quarterback of a football team. There's some level of performance, you're a fighter pilot. There's some level of performance where you have to perform, and that performance gives you a level of status. That level of status then generates attraction. So that's essentially, when we go back to it, what are men doing wrong? It's the men who believe that they're just good enough. They listen to their therapist or their mother tell them that they're special snowflakes, that they're good enough, that they don't have to try so hard or concern themselves with what other people think, and that you can continue to believe that. And I think internally as a human being, it's good to have a high self-esteem. But the reality is, in a sexual marketplace, you're not enough. Unless you're incredibly good looking. In a sexual marketplace, you must perform. And so having men understand that there is a burden of performance always for men, not always for women. Women can be the captain or the passenger. Men cannot be the passenger. Men can only be the captain. And so when you understand that concept, when you grasp that concept, then you have the ability to generate attraction. And then that's what the thing that keeps you from being invisible. Because by default, you are invisible. Have you ever seen, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, Rafa, the way women see you now? I think that you have a Daytona on, I can't tell. The way women see you now, being successful, in shape, with tattoo sleeves, being a good speaker, having a podcast in comparison to how they saw you fresh out of high school. Women now see you. There's so much more they see in you. And so, because of that, you're able to generate more attraction. Why is it that? It's because a continual stack of performance on top of performance on top of performance. You kept meeting the goal, the standard, the deadline over and over again. And it made you more experienced, more shrewd, wealthier, more intelligent, and gave you more wisdom over time, which are things that women find to be attractive, which makes sense ancestrally because it is the shrewd, wise warrior, the man who understands not only here's how I take care of my tribe, but here's also how I conduct violence in order to protect my tribe. That man, that resourceful man, was the man that women would choose to breed with.
Awesome. I love that. So these are questions that I'm going to bombard you here. I'm going to throw you real quick here. All right. Men in general, they are looking, at least the men that I come across, I get a sense that men are looking for women who are, they're not interested in the boss bitches. They're not interested in these women that are bouncing around clubs and looking around, and getting drunk. They're not interested in that. Most men want to find a woman that they can procreate with. Men want to find a woman that can cultivate peace. They want a beautiful woman. They're looking for a sense of tranquility in their life, but at the same time, they want a beautiful woman that's going to support them. They don't want that edgy type of woman. Do you run a? Is that a normal statement? What I'm
Yeah,
saying, or
of
do
course.
you run across men who, hey, from a sexual perspective, they want to bang as many women as they can, have a good
Yeah.
time, and so I want to know, like, in the world that you're in, is it
Uh-huh.
different? Is it different than the world that I am in? You see what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
I gear most of the guys that I gear with are probably 35, almost 40 and higher into
Hmm.
50s
Yeah.
and 60s. So a lot of these men are a little bit more settled down. They're looking for a wife. They're looking. So I don't know if maybe I'm disconnected from the younger generation, but is it still, from your experience, that men are inherently, that's what they want. They want to procreate with someone beautiful. They want to be able
Hmm.
to have that sense of beauty in their lives and that sense of almost tranquility. Or are they hunters? Are they going out there and they want this one, the next one, the next one, the next one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the fact you're asking the question sort of illustrates the point, which is the answer is both. It just depends on where you are. Like right now, if I met a woman who was outrageously beautiful, but she had a problem with alcohol and she did wild, crazy stuff on her OnlyFans, I might go out with her, but I'm not going to take her seriously as far as a relationship is concerned. I can tell you that same woman, when I was 22 years old, I probably would have done anything because I just wanted to have sex with hot women. I think as a man, as you get older, you start to grow standards, and those standards then change. The other thing is, it's this is just in my situation. The more beautiful women you're with, the higher your standards become, and as they become higher, then you start tolerating less and less. And so the answer to your question is both. It just depends on where they are. You have a super high testosterone guy who has very low status. He's not going to tell you, man, the only thing I want is just to find one woman and settle down. He's going through a phase right now where testosterone is flooding his brain, and he's just like, let me get at as many women as possible, go out as much as possible. And you'll see men doing this. And then here's another thing. There's correlations between the amount of women in an environment and the amount of violence. So in situations where there's a lot of women available who are around, you have less violence. In situations where it outnumbers, like for instance, guys who out working like an oil rig or those crab fishermen out in Alaska, when they go out to bars, it's like 7 dudes for every guy. You're going to see a lot more violence in those situations because there's fewer women around. And so, going back to your original point, like this is a situation where we're going through different phases. And so I had a phase right after college where it was like if she was brown, if she was hot, I didn't care. I was down. And now when I get older, now I'm in a phase where it's like you have to completely support my business, you have to completely understand my lifestyle, and you have to completely understand what brings me peace. I'll help you. I'll help support you in any way you want. But if your intention is to be disruptive, disrespectful, or anything like that, we can be friends, maybe we can hook up once in a while, but you're never going to be my girlfriend. If you want to achieve that girlfriend, I considered it like an executive at my company. If you want to achieve that girlfriend executive position, in order to get that position, you have to be someone who does not accuse, does not exaggerate, someone who does not attack, someone who asks me how I feel, don't jump to conclusions and tell me how I feel, someone who understands you have to completely and fully support my empire, what it is that I'm trying to build. If we can do that, then that will work along with you being fantastically beautiful. So going back to what you said, I've seen both. I've definitely seen both. It just depends on where men are. Here's the problem, Rafa. It's when they come to this realization, hey, I just want a wife, but women don't find them attractive. So let's say we have a guy who has very little experience with women, and he's like, you know what? The only thing I keep going home, and my mom and dad keep telling me I need to have kids, and I go to the church, and they're telling me I need to hurry up and get married. And so they have very little experience with women, and then they're being kind of pigeonholed into get married now, immediately, quickly get married. This guy who has very little experience with women,
Yep.
you know, we can use Steven Crowder is a great example. The conservative talk show guy, really funny guy, makes really cool content. But what happened was he married the first woman that he dated, and now she's divorcing him, and he has no prenup. And so this is what happens when you have a guy like that who's in other aspects in life probably a pretty intelligent guy. He's made a very poor decision here. Same thing with the Travis Hunter situation. He's the second pick in the draft, and he just married his girlfriend who had an OnlyFans, cheated on him a few times. He just married her with no prenup in the state of Tennessee. What is this? This is an example where a man with very little understanding of women jumped into a marriage very quickly, and now he's going to be the victim of what, even if his wife loves him now, she's going to be consistently incentivized to take half his money through social media, divorce attorneys, etc. Society is going to try to steer her in that direction. And so that's why you have to understand you need some experience with women to understand them before you go off and get into a serious relationship. I've heard, Myron say you need to sleep with 50 women before you get in a relationship. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that 50 women need to want to sleep with you before you get in a relationship. Because what does that mean? That means you understand concepts of attraction. How do I build attraction in women? If I'm able to build attraction in women consistently, then I will have options. Having those options and having more reference experience, then I can tell, okay, wait a second. The consistent complaining about the narcissistic ex, okay, there's something going on. This is a red flag. I've seen this before. It's like, okay, you can't show up because you have to create content all the time. Go with creating content on your OnlyFans. Okay, I know what that means now. I've had enough experience to know what that means. The girl who's just like, I know this girl's dated a couple of my guy friends. She slept with them on the first date, but she's telling me she doesn't sleep with the guys on the first date. Okay, I know what that is. The consistent level of stimulus. I need to be on stage. I need to be at Coachella. I need to be at Ibiza. I need to be at Art Basel. The girl who does that leaves her boyfriend behind. It's like, okay, I know what that means now. I understand what these red flags are because over time I've experienced it consistently. Women saying, "Oh, he broke up with me because he was intimidated by my job." Okay, well, I know that's not true. I certainly wasn't intimidated. So she's making up these stories. You start to see, because you have more experience with women, you start to see these red flags for what they are, and it makes you more experienced so that when you meet a good woman, you can identify her. What most men who have very little experience with women do, however, is see a big butt and a smile, a nice set of boobs, and then all of a sudden they start envisioning, oh, this girl is different. This girl is special, but just because she's physically attractive, or maybe she gives you good sex. You start
That's right. That's right.
believing all the things that she's saying without any proof. It doesn't mean she's lying, but just you need some kind of proof. There's a standard by which you would do business with a man. If a man consistently makes claims, you would go validate those claims by talking to people he's worked with previously, and then you would look at his performance, his KPIs, his performance on a week-to-week basis. That's how you would judge a man. But for a woman, it's like she says all this stuff about her exes and she was a good girl and she never cheated. And those things may be true, but when you go and actually do your due diligence and ask, and then you watch her performance on a weekly basis, you're like, okay, these two things aren't matching up exactly. But again, because I have higher standards and because I'm willing to look past how physically attractive she is, now I can see those red flags for what they are. So my answer to you is, it's like, I think a guy should date multiple women on his way to finding a wife. The answer is a hybrid of both. If it's just I'm coming out here. I go to the gym every day and I got my master's degree and I have a great job. I deserve a good woman. That guy is a financial target to women. And then the other guy who's like, I don't give a fuck about money. I don't care about my career. I just want to bang a bunch of girls. That guy right there is going to spend a majority of his life
Yeah.
not learning the skill sets, the mechanisms to make money. And so he's going to end up in a financial deficit later on in life. And the answer is both. You are dating multiple women on your way to finding a wife.
That's awesome. I love that. So let's talk about women as far as how they see men, right? There's a confusion because a lot of women will come out and they'll say, "Hey, I want the guy that's 6 feet tall, that's making a certain amount of money, that has status, a man who is can provide and can protect." But is that really what these women that you've talked to is this actually what they're looking for, or is it something deeper than that, or is it something more specific than that?
So one thing that I found is that humans are unreliable narrators. It's a term in literature, the unreliable narrator, where the guy who's telling the story turns out he's like not telling the truth about himself. A lot of times humans, in general, humans are unreliable narrators, meaning they will report that they want a certain thing, but then when you watch them in practice, they end up doing a separate thing. We see this often where women will report, of course, women will say they want the top 30, 20, 10% of men as far as physical attractiveness is concerned. And then when we look at who they date, they're like, oh, I ended up settling for a guy who's a 4. But then this is very commonly what happens. A woman is a 5. Okay. She meets a guy who's a 5 and she's totally uninterested in him. And the reason why she's uninterested is because on dating apps, she's getting outrageous levels of attraction. An unattractive woman is getting 10 times more matches than a very attractive man on a dating app. So because of that, she doesn't understand she's a 5. She believes, and by the way, when I say 5, I don't mean to offend anyone. What I mean is if we took a million different Tinder profiles and we rank them based on the number of right swipes we get. We stratify them. The ones that get in the top 10%, we'd call them 9s and 10s. And the ones that would get the fewest, we would call them 0s and 1s. The ones in the middle, we would call them 5s. This woman is a 5. She gets an average number of right swipes for a woman. And then this guy is a 5. He gets the average number of right swipes for a man. She's not interested in him. He's very interested in her. So what happens at this point is because all the attention she gets on social media, all the attention she gets on dating apps, all the attention she gets from men in the gym, and all the attention she gets potentially if she has an OnlyFans or a Sex Panther or whatever, Patreon, whatever, all that attention she gets then makes her believe that she's a 7, 8, and 9. So now she believes she's an 8. This guy who's a 5 comes up and talks to her, and she's like, ooh, this isn't working. So now she tries to date other guys that are 8 or 9s. These guys are more than willing to have sex with her. They're not willing to commit to her. And then over time, usually around the time she gets to 29 or 30, then she's like, okay, I'm looking for something serious. I'm going to settle for this guy who's a 5. But in reality, what's going on, Rafa? The guy she's settling for is the same level of attractiveness that she is. She's just not aware of it because the way that society has changed her views, almost perverted or manipulated her views into thinking that she's a higher status than she actually is on the sexual marketplace. What happens often is women will be able to have sex with a guy who's very high status, but she's not able to procure commitment from that guy.
That's right.
And the confusion is why there's delusion. That's why we get these the delusional women. And I don't mean delusion as an insult. I know a lot of guys on these red pill podcasts say delusion. These women are, these 304s are delusional. That's what I'm saying. I mean delusional in the denotative sense, like what you would read in the dictionary. There's what reality is, and then there's what you believe reality is, and the difference between the two is delusion. There is a delusion. A woman, I know a woman right now, she's been engaged 5 times. And she believes that all of these men were committed to her when in reality, what was going on? She got engagement rings from 5 different wealthy men who were just trying to procure sexual fecundity from her, meaning she wouldn't have sex with any other men. Meanwhile, she's just being used for sex, thinking that she is his fiance, not recognizing this man probably has a wife somewhere or another girlfriend somewhere. This is a tactic I see very wealthy men use on a regular basis where and then you have a bunch of women saying he proposed to me, I was engaged, and like she was never really engaged. There's no reason for a woman to be engaged 5 times. If you're engaged 5 times, that means you were never engaged. It just means a lot of men figured out a tactic to use you for sex. So we see this whole kind of thing happen frequently, and that's where we get back into the whole initial premise that I was talking about before, is that as a man, you need to be able to tell the difference. You need enough discernment to be able to know, okay, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy. This is a guy who's good, or this is a good girl that I might want to date who's going to bring peace into my life. And this is a woman who's really hot, incredible in bed, but she's going to bring a lot of chaos into my life. And I need to have enough experience and enough abundance to where I could walk away from the crazy girl. Because there's a lot of men out there, no matter how crazy a woman is, if she's the hottest woman he's ever had sex with, he's going to put up with a whole lot to have sex with her because he doesn't have any other options. The best example I've ever seen of this is the 1,000 guys who lined up to have sex with Bonnie Blue.
Yeah, heard
The
about
idea that there's 1,000 men willing to line up for free to have sexual intercourse with Bonnie Blue, who she's not an ugly girl, but the fact that she's 23, she does not look 23. She's heading up on 35 the way she looks. And I don't know if she just has bad skin or whatever it is, but the fact that a girl like that has 1,000 men lined up to have sex with her, could you imagine what is wrong with our society when you're guy number 762 and you're looking at guy who's number 763 behind you, and 761 is in there plowing her at this moment, and you're about to go in there next and have sex with her? What is wrong with you mentally to where you would even expose yourself to something like that? And the answer is obviously a lack of abundance, extreme levels of scarcity, women not seeing you, women thinking that you're invisible. All these concepts that we talked about previously lead to one woman getting 1,000 men to have sex with her for free.
Well, I love that. Okay, let's talk about cheating. Why is it that women cheat? I mean, you mentioned something at the beginning of the podcast where it was, that women always have a plan B or someone in the background.
Sure.
And is it true? Listen, I've been married 22 years now. I have, 4 kids. And so, I'm happily married. But what I can say is that, I know many men out there who have, cheated and who their wives, their spouses and fiancés have, cheated on them also. So why is it, why is it that either men cheat, and do you think, or from your experience, that women cheat just as much as men?
Okay, so the thing we have to start with is, have you ever you've seen bodybuilding before? Have you ever
Oh
seen
yeah, yeah,
bodybuilders?
yes.
Okay, so you understand that when a bodybuilder in his peak form, his peak his like super physiological levels of testosterone, because he's taking trenbolone and equipoise and
Right.
Mastron and Deca and whatever, like loads of testosterone. At that point he can't maintain that peak level of performance his whole life. If Derek Jackson or Jay Cutler or Ronnie Coleman stayed at that form their whole life, they would have died out very quickly. You understand that, right?
Oh yeah, very
So
well.
in order to get to that peak level, they have to train every day. They have to eat at a certain level. There's this like peak level of performance. Same thing happens when a guy goes through Navy SEAL training, BUDS training. There's that peak level of performance that generally they don't maintain through their entire career, but something close to that. You still with me?
On it.
Okay. Monogamy is that peak level of performance that you have to maintain by going to the gym every day. Okay. So in order for Jay Cutler to look as ripped as he is, he has to go to the gym every day. In order for monogamy to work, the man and the woman have to be willing to go to the gym of the relationship, meaning they have to work out on the relationship every single day. And when one of the two of them doesn't work out, then the relationship starts to decay, starts to fall apart. There starts to be certain levels of imbalance. The reason why is because when you look at guys who are bodybuilders, is that a natural state for a human being to be? To have 2,000 nanograms per
No,
deciliter in their testosterone.
no,
Is that a
no,
natural
no. That's
state?
an
Of course
abnormal
not.
now.
It's not a
Right.
natural state. Okay, ready? Monogamy is also not a natural state for Homo sapiens. There's no example anywhere in history where we can see monogamy being the natural state for humans. The natural state for humans is not polygamy or monogamy. The natural state is little small the natural state for Homo sapiens is small periods of monogamy interspersed in a lifetime of polygamy. And that's generally how it works. Let me say that one more time for your clips here, because I don't know why I'm screwing this up today. It's too early in the morning. It is long periods interspersed periods of monogamy interspersed in a lifetime of polygamy. This is a term I came up with. I explained it to Dr. Buss. He
Mhm.
agrees completely. This is generally the human experience.
Mhm.
There's a man who's in his 20s who gets married, and then possibly his relationship ends with his wife. About 80% of divorces are initiated by women. So now he's 35. He gets married for a second time. He's got another 10-year relationship. He might get divorced and get married a third time in his 50s. He might have another relationship with a woman who's significantly younger. This is a common thing that we see for men over and over again. Men are actually more likely to be remarried later in life than women are. And so, where do these things happen? So let's go back to what you said about cheating. Cheating for men and women is different. This is one I will die on this hill. If anyone wants to have a debate about this, there is so much data on this. There is no reason to even argue for this or argue this. A man absolutely, this is going to piss a lot of people off, but a man absolutely can cheat on his wife and still love her. Very much so. In fact, frequently they do. There's tons of data showing that men who cheat in a relationship and men who don't cheat have the same level of satisfaction in the marriage. So I want you to consider this. I love my wife. I'm having a great time. 90 out of 100. My relationship with my wife is incredible. And then you take the same guy and he cheats on his wife. He still loves his wife just the same amount. Women find this abhorrent. They find this whole idea to be completely offensive. They can't believe any of this is true. But whenever I ask men, hey, can a guy cheat on his wife and still love his wife? Every guy I know raises their hand like, yes, absolutely. The one has nothing to do with the other because men have this ability to contextualize or decontextualize sex or compartmentalize sex. When women cheat in a relationship, 83% of the time, they reported having marital dissatisfaction. Okay. So let me say it one more time. Men who cheat, men who did not cheat showed the same level of satisfaction in a marriage. When women cheated, 83% of the time, those women said that their satisfaction in the marriage was lower. So when women cheat, they tend to cheat because they're not getting what they need from a relationship. Men cheat because they're horny. Those are two different things. If you want to debate this, anybody sees this, wants to debate me on this, it will come, but you better do your research because I'm going to bring 20 papers proving to what I'm saying is true. Men and women cheat for different reasons. Now, whether or not men cheat more or women cheat more, here's the big difference. Men do cheat more from all the data we've seen, but the reality is men would actually cheat more than they do. It's just that there are very few women that with which for them to cheat. Most men can't procure one partner. The idea of a man procuring multiple partners, we're dealing with the top 20, 30% of men who are able to do that. So it's not that most men cheat. It's like most men can't cheat. The vast majority of men, the guy who's the assistant manager at the Walmart in Des Moines, he's not exposed to enough women that would allow him to cheat in the first place. And so that's the reason why men don't cheat more than they actually do. Um, and so, I mean, that's the answer. But the idea that women cheat more than men, I know Sadia Khan believes that women cheat more than men. And I definitely seen this phenomenon where women will cheat and just absolutely not admit that it's cheating. They had a fight with their boyfriend and they slept with the guy, so that doesn't count because they had a fight, or the guy used the condom or whatever. Or this is a big one. I've heard multiple women say this to me before. She didn't have an orgasm, therefore it wasn't cheating. And then the other one I've seen frequently is she had a threesome with a couple, and so that doesn't count as cheating. I have absolutely. I'm not. This is not theoretical. I have with my own ears heard women say every single one of these excuses and say that they're not cheat. They don't count it as cheating. He pissed me off, so it's not cheating. He flirted with another girl, so I fucked another dude, so that's not cheating. That's how legitimately how they believe. I'm not saying every woman's like this, but I have heard these examples in every case. Um, and I'll tell you, like cheating is a deal where you need to understand evolutionarily, number one, monogamy was not the natural state for humans. So there's going to be a proclivity for some sexual variety, more so with men than women. And then number two, that men and women define cheating very differently. This is one of my favorite surveys, and I got to go find the data on this, but it's like when men were receiving a blowjob, did they consider that cheating? And like a small percentage of men thought that was cheating. And then when they asked those same men, if your girlfriend gives a blowjob, is that cheating? And then like 90% of those men said, yes, that
Yeah.
was cheating. That was cheating. So
Yeah.
it is, there is a double standard when it comes to
Yeah.
that as well. So it's a really interesting question. The thing we have to understand is, and by the way, if you are interested in the concepts of cheating, the number one expert I would refer to, especially on the internet, would be Mack and Murphy. He is he's a person who studies dating and relationships. He studies human mating and professionally. I believe he's studying at a university in Australia right now. He's getting his PhD. Mac and Murphy is what I believe is going to be, if he is not now, the foremost expert in the world on cheating. So I would probably look up his stuff, but he has some really, really great data when it comes to that.
Awesome. I love that. Okay, so you mentioned something very powerful right there, which was a lot of men don't cheat that often because they don't have the options. Because realistically, they're just, it's hard enough to procure one freaking relationship with a woman, and they just don't have it. So it makes a great point. I get it. It's for me personally, I look at it and I say, well, when it comes to marriage or being faithful, I look at it from a different perspective. I look at it from being an honorable man. Yes, the fight is on. It is, a constant fight because we are, and I truly believe that as men, it's not an easy task. Temptation is there, especially if you're a man that is, a high status man that is definitely has options. Those guys who are walking that line and who are holding that line, I tip my hat off to them. But we need men like you, man, that will guide, these invisible men to come up to the forefront. So I really appreciate you, man. And I love the fact that you're transparent. And you made a key statement at the beginning of this podcast, which was, it's not about money. It's not about how much money you have or how much money you're throwing
Yeah.
around. It goes deeper than that. So I
Well,
love that.
Rafa, money is an attraction trigger. There are some women who see
Sure.
money as an allegory for competency.
Sure.
And I do think you can attract women with money.
Hmm.
My job is to teach you how to attract women without money. Right? It's almost like you have a slam dunk competition with your friends, but you put like a trampoline in front of the basket, and you're jumping off the trampoline and dunking the
Yeah.
basketball. That's
Yeah.
basically attraction using money. I
Yeah.
need you to learn how to dunk the basketball without using the trampoline
That's right.
first.
That's
Let's
right.
learn how to do that first, and then we can add money. And then one other caveat, and we're actually making modules in MOA specifically on this idea, using money as a funnel, not using money as a crutch. Buying girls gifts on the first date is using money as a crutch. Use like giving money an allowance, giving women an allowance before you go on a first date. That's using money as a crutch. Creating an incredible party at your place, like just say you have a charity event, you're hosting it at your beautiful home. A bunch of girls come over, it's catered. Everybody, there's a bunch of places for girls to take photos, and then you have a little after party afterwards where just the girls are invited. That's using money as a funnel. Using money as a funnel, totally okay. Using money as a crutch shows women that you don't have the ability to generate attraction, which is why they're never going to respect you. They might sleep with you, especially if they're escorts. They might sleep with you, but they're never going to have genuine attraction for you if you use money as a crutch. You should only use money as a funnel. Teach you the specifics of that in the course.
And okay, so you have where can people follow you? What courses do you have? And so people can go and I'll write that. We'll put that in the show notes
Sure.
so people can follow you. So what's your Instagram?
Yeah. So just the easiest way to find all of it, just go to Instagram, Michael Sartain, just one
Okay,
word,
got it. And
14
everything is
letters
there.
there.
All right.
So yeah, if you guys want to learn more, there's a link in the bio. You can go there. You can find out. If you guys want to go to moamentoring.com, you can also see that. One thing I do recommend for anyone who's a skeptical, they heard what I'm saying, and if you're skeptical and you're just like, hey, Michael, I just don't want to do all this stuff on social media, that's one thing. But it's the people who actually believe that this wouldn't work. I invite you to take your skepticism and go to moamentoring.com/testimonials, and then just go through the 10 video testimonials, and then realize there's another 300 that are behind it. Just go through all the testimonials, pick anyone you want, watch the video testimonials of guys explaining their experience, and then watch that. One of the things that's different about my testimonials is that while the guys are giving the testimonials, we're showing you video after video, photo after photo of beautiful women these guys are dating, beautiful women that these guys go out with on a regular basis. We have very, very, very specific testimonials. We only have 200 testimonials, I think, up there right now, but that's just because the video editor ran out. We'd have 2,000 testimonials right now if we had enough time to make them all. We have so many guys lined up. One of the things that happens generally around the 6 month mark is guys are biting at the, chomping at the bit just to give us a testimonial because they want to share their experience with other people. So this is something absolutely works. It's something that's based on science. It's something that's based on 25 years of experience. It's something that's based on me interviewing thousands of guys who do really, really well with women. And it's also something that comes from me asking women about not their experiences, but essentially like how long it took for them to sleep with a guy on the first date. What made this you choose this guy over this guy? Certain things like that. Just thousands and thousands of pieces of reference experience that we use in order to create this program. And the one thing I will guarantee you, absolutely, because I know a lot of people make guarantees. This is one thing I will guarantee. You can hold me to this. If you do what we ask, I guarantee you will see results. I guarantee you can hold me to that. I'll put that on in writing, $1 million if you want. If you do what we ask, I guarantee you will have results.
Awesome. Michael, thank you for being on. I appreciate you, brother. It was an honor to have you, and a lot of great information here. So we'll do some shorts out of this, and then we're going to post it on YouTube and all our social media logins, guys. So thank you for being on. May God bless you.
All right, man. Talk to you soon, Rafa. Thank you, brother.